Ramadan, 87.9 FM.
Kunzah, give me a funny Ramadan FM moment this year.
A funny moment. Don't know. I think earlier on this week, on Tuesday, there was the Islamic Quill show with brother Muhammad Suleiman and brother Hassan. And Muhammad Suleiman, mashallah, is doing quite a lot of shows this year. And if you're doing a show with him, you know you need to be prepared. And I think Hassan found that out on Tuesday when Suleiman asked him a question about, I think it was Ali radiyallahu anhu, and his relationship with the Prophet, and he couldn't quite remember. So yeah, I found that a bit funny when I was driving back from work. I had them on. That was fun.
I found there are different presenters, different types of presenters on Ramadan FM. You've got the presenter with all the knowledge, who just gives out knowledge after knowledge, boom, boom, boom. You've got the interviewer. This is a presenter who invites guests and facilitates discussion between them. Then you've got the passionate, oh my people presenter. The Oh My People presenter is the kind of presenter who goes, oh, my brothers and my sisters of Islam, we must unite. That kind of presenter, right? The passionate one. And then you've got a lot of different types of presenters as well.
Yeah, and then you have those annoying presenters that think they're really cool, and they like playing stuff during their shows.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Welcome to Faisal and Kunzah.
We'll be talking about holy topics,
Conducting interviews
and busting some myths.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Salam alaikum. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rabbi hanikum. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Salam alaikum. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rabbi hanikum.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to episode 3 of Faisal and Kunzah. I'm Faisal.
And in case you missed the first part of this show, I'm Kunzah.
And we are going to be talking about halal money on this show. All the different ways to make money in Islam. But it's not going to be a boring finance show. Don't worry. We're going to try and liven it up with lots of different features and segments as well. It should be really, really good. Here's the format of today's show.
So the first bit of the show, really, the first half hour is about our main topic, which this week is halal money. Then we'll have an interview with an expert on halal money, or really how to make your money halal. And then the last part of the show is about busting some myths. And this time, hopefully, inshallah, we will have enough time to do our Mythbuster section.
That's right. The Azan time, the Maghrib Azan time is at 8:30, exactly 8:30 today. So we've got an hour and a half of this show. Now, you might be wondering who our expert is, our halal money expert. Well, we have a guru on this show, but not one from the local Gurudwara. No. Rather, we have Ibrahim Khan from Islamic Finance Guru. He will be on this show from 7:30 p.m. Inshallah. He'll be able to answer lots of questions about zakat, investing, and his website. He runs a blog, IslamicFinanceGuru.com. Should be really, really excited. I hope he joins. It'll be really, really good to talk to him.
Yes, indeed. And then every week we have a topic on the WhatsApp line. And the topic this week obviously has to do with money. So our topic this week is, if you receive a bonus right now, so if you receive some money, how would you spend it? Now, I want you to text us the first thing you think about when you think about receiving £5,000 right now. How would you spend it? Text us on our WhatsApp line, which you can receive from our website, ramadanfm.com. And then if you don't have that, our WhatsApp line is 07591 970 241. Text us.
And you can also leave a comment if you are watching us live on YouTube. There's a chat box on the right. Or if you're watching us live on Facebook, just leave a comment on the video and we'll be able to read those comments out on air. So that question again, if you received a bonus right now, how would you spend it? Send us your responses and how would you spend it, Kunzah?
Right. So if I received a bonus right now, actually today we've been thinking quite a lot about zakat. I've been calculating how to give it and a lot of that. So that's the first thing that really comes into my mind, that I would maybe put some of that towards zakat, because obviously it would be zakatable or whatever, I guess, as well. But yeah, other than that, we've been planning to go on holiday for a while. We've been planning to go to the Maldives, nice beach, sunny location, because we've been stuck in the UK for over a year now. Yes, maybe some of that would go towards that holiday.
Fantastic stuff. Well, look, keep your WhatsApps coming in. Do start sending them in. We're also going to be playing some of the 99 names of Allah on this show. There are 99 names of Allah, as you all know. Well, actually, there's more than 99 names because there's disagreements about what goes into the 99 names. But we will be playing some of them on this show. In fact, let's kick off with one right now.
Asma'ullahul Husna. There are 99 names of Allah.
Al-Mujib, the ever responsive. Allah favorably responds to the supplications and requests of his slaves. He answers their supplications and grants their requests.
There we go. That was Al-Mujib. Great. We've had some WhatsApps come in already. So let's get reading some of those out. We have one saying, Salam, good program. That's a great text to have, considering we just started 8 minutes ago. We're already doing really, really well. Fantastic stuff. And then we have another one that's come in as well.
Yeah, so this one, thanks a lot for your text. It says, Salam, probably spend it on charity, of course, and then towards home renovations. That's a much more, I guess, long-term way of spending it rather than us just going on holiday.
Great. I don't know if I gave mine out. To be fair, I can't actually think of what I would spend it on right now. Probably, yeah, of course, zakat, as you mentioned, you'd give some of it to zakat because this is a time when people tend to pay their zakat. But also, I think I would spend it on a nice takeaway because I'm just feeling like a takeaway right now.
5K on a takeaway. Wow.
Yeah, I'm really hungry today. We have another WhatsApp that's come in saying, I would share it between my children, let them decide whether to give it to charity or blow it on a holiday or luxury items. Okay, that's a nice one. Fantastic stuff. Okay, great. So, shall we get into our main topic? Yeah. Okay, you're nodding, so that means yeah. Let's get into our main topic, which is halal money. Okay, so in short, there's nothing wrong with making money in Islam. In fact, in chapter 17 of the Quran, it encourages us to travel throughout the land and seek the bounty of Allah. That's verse number 12. However, it should not become the ultimate goal. Rather, we should focus on getting closer to Allah, and that's because Allah has more to offer. There's a verse in Surah Al-Imran, chapter 3, verse 14, which says, beautified for people is the love of that which they desire, of women and sons, heaped up sums of gold and silver, fine branded horses and cattle, and tilled land. That is the enjoyment of the worldly life, but Allah has with him the best return. So, of course, things like that, gold, silver, horses, cattle, tilled land, that was like the ultimate stuff they could get their hands on in those days. And that was like the world to them. So it's saying that, of course, Allah has a better return.
In fact, the Prophet ﷺ has said that we are the people of the middle way. So we're supposed to enjoy both the dunya and also work towards the hereafter and work in our deen. So it should be like a split really in both. And obviously, if we are making money, that should be halal. And this is what all this week's show is about. So why do we pay zakah? Some of it is actually for preventing us from hoarding money. So we can earn money, but we should avoid hoarding it. In fact, there's an ayah in the Quran that says, and those who hoard gold and silver, spend it not in the way of Allah, give them tidings of painful punishment. And this is why, for example, you're supposed to invest that money. So then if you pay zakat on it every year, per se, if you are hoarding 10K in your bank account, you have to pay zakat on that 10K every year it's in your bank account. However, if you invest it and if it's not in your bank account, then obviously you would only pay it on whatever profit you have on that. So yeah.
Fantastic stuff. Okay, great. So there are different types of, well, there are different ways to make money. We're going to cover non-halal ways and then halal ways afterwards. So we have non-halal ways such as through interest, and that's a big topic. Begging, we'll talk about that in a second. And then we have the more halal ways, such as investing, working, freelancing, making money through a blog. If you have a blog or a website, we'll discuss that. And also giving to charity. That's right. Giving money to charity to make money. We'll explain exactly what we mean in a second. So let's look at some non-halal ways to make money, first of all. So interest is a very common way to build wealth in today's world. Everyone does it, right? However, is this allowed in Islam? Let's take a look. In his book, The Major Sins, by Muhammad bin Uthman ad-Dhahabi, he ranked interest as the 11th major sin. To put that in perspective, let's read out the first 15 major sins.
Yes, so here you have the list of the first 15 major sins. Number 1, shirk, which is obviously associating partners with Allah. Then we have committing murder. Then we have practicing seher, which is sorcery. Then we have leaving off daily prayers, not doing your 5 daily prayers. Not paying the amount of zakat that one person is required to do so. That's number 5. Then we have not fasting on the days of Ramadan. Not performing Hajj if you have the ability to do that. Cutting off the ties of relationship, and number 8. Number 9 is committing adultery. Then in the top 10, at number 10, we have drinking alcohol and taking drugs. And then at number 11, we have what we're discussing today, which is taking or paying interest, which is known as riba. Then number 12 is consuming the property of an orphan. Number 13 is lying about Allah and His Messenger, peace be upon him. Number 14 is turning back when the army advances, running from the battlefield, being a coward, basically. And number 15 is being an unjust leader, which is also something we should take into account when we look at today's really political climates in different countries. So interest is really worse than consuming the property of an orphan, which is really frowned upon in the Quran. And spreading lies about Allah, even that is really frowned upon as well in the Quran. And it's even worse than gambling, stealing, which we don't even reach in the list. So just think about that.
Yeah, it's really powerful stuff. And unfortunate that so many people are involved. Okay, so let's take a look at interest in the Quran. The word riba translates to usury or interest, and it's mentioned 12 times in the Quran. Let's take a look at just some of them. So Allah clearly forbids interest. It says, believers, do not swallow interest, doubled and redoubled, and be mindful of Allah so that you may attain true success. That's chapter 3, verse number 130. In fact, interest is the only sin that Allah declares war on in the Quran. This is in Surah Baqarah. It says, believers, have fear of Allah and give up all outstanding interest if you truly believe. But if you fail to do so, then be warned of a war from Allah and His Messenger. So that's verse 278 to 279 of Surah Baqarah.
In a powerful hadith, not only is the receiver of interest cursed, but also the one paying interest, the one recording it, and any witnesses that are there for this transaction. In fact, from Jabir, the Prophet said, peace be upon him, may be cursed the receiver and the payer of interest, the one who records it, and the 2 witnesses to the transaction, and said they're all alike in guilt, and that's in Muslim.
So I guess the question that we had at the start is interest a halal way to make money? Not exactly. So what other ways to make money are there? In fact, before we go into that, let's just look at why interest is so bad.
So, in short, interest causes the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. On a macro scale, this results in super rich countries and super poor countries. In fact, in 1960s, 20% of people in the richest countries had 30 times the income of the poorest 20%. And in 1997, it was 74 times as much. So by taking interest, we're contributing to unbalance of wealth in society. It's even forbidden in the Bible, where it says, if thou lend money to any of my people, even to the poor with thee, thou shalt not be to him as a creditor, neither shall ye lie upon him interest. And that's from Exodus chapter 22, verse 24. And if you just think about something more recently, I mean, I wasn't alive in 1960s or whatever this happened.
You're not.
No. Anyway, even if you just think about back to something that I do remember, the 2008 economic crash, for those of you who were alive then and can remember it, that was very much dependent on basically a crash due to interest, due to banks giving out mortgages that were not affordable, people defaulting on those mortgages, and therefore this caused a big deficit in the economy. And also it caused a lot of people to lose their lives, a lot of suicides happened, and it wasn't good at all in 2008. A lot of graduates couldn't get jobs because there were no jobs available. So that was all dependent on interest, really.
So I want to let Hamza Yusuf, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, kind of sum up this topic of interest. We've got a short clip to play of his, and then we'll move on to other ways to make money in Islam.
Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu wattaqullaha وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَا إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Oh, you who believe, be conscious of God and leave what remains from this usury. If you truly believe in God, leave what remains from this usury if you truly believe in God. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, and if you don't do it, فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, then be warned of a war from God and His messenger. Be warned. Allah's given a warning. Be warned. Now, the Jews know this. The Christians know this. It wasn't until 1832 that the Catholic Church started permitting this stuff. They knew it. It's in their books. It's in the Torah. They know. Aristotle said it's the most unnatural form of wealth acquisition. Even the philosophers condemn it. You don't have to be a prophet to know the dangers and the inherent evils of this system. But wallahi, thumma wallahi, if you want to understand this situation, this is just one skirmish in a war that God has declared on a system that is unjust, that deprives people of their wealth, deprives people of their businesses, deprives people of their homes. With usury, everything foul comes to be.
So that was a short clip from Sheikh Hamza Yusuf talking about the dangers, I guess, of riba, of interest in society. If you are listening to us on the radio, see if you can get up to Facebook and YouTube, because we will be, for the first time ever, playing video clips on this show. Okay, so it's not something we've done before on Ramadan FM, but when we play audio clips, you'll be able to see the video as well. So if you can listen to us, do get up on Facebook and YouTube. If not, you can always watch us back afterwards. Just go to ramadanfm.com and you'll have all the links on there. Okay, we had a message come in saying mashallah, and that's from Mahmoud. Thank you very much for that message. And I think we have some more WhatsApps come in as well.
Okay. So that was a reply to our question earlier. So what would you do if you received a bonus right now? Text us what the first thing you think about. And we had a text saying, I would share between my children, let them decide if to give it to charity or blow it in holiday and luxury items.
We read that one out already, but that's fine. It's Ramadan, you're fasting. He also goes on to say, when I said good program, I meant a good subject matter. Okay, did we have any more come through?
Yeah, on a similar, I guess, luxury item topic, we had another one from Sharzad that says she would blow it on a shopping trip, which is good, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So the next way to make money one of the ways could be to beg for money. Hopefully it doesn't apply to anybody listening, but one way to make money is to beg. However, this is discouraged in Islam. In fact, in Islam, we are encouraged to work for our money instead, even if it's just picking up sticks and selling them as firewood. In an authentic hadith, Abu Huraira reported that the Prophet said, "It is better for one amongst you to bring a load of firewood on his back and give charity out of it and be independent of people than that he should beg from people, whether they give him anything or refuse him. Verily, the upper hand is better than the lower hand, and begin charity with your dependents." That's in Muslim. So there's some encouragement to, instead of beg for money, to at least do some kind of work. And you see this in some countries where people will pick flowers and sell flowers to others on the street and that kind of thing. That's encouraged in Islam, to try and get something going, and then maybe it'll lead to a bigger business later on. Okay, so those are some not so recommended ways to make money in Islam. So now let's look at recommended ways, halal ways to make money in Islam. The first one I want to cover, and I'm just going to cover this really briefly because we've got Ibrahim Khan from Islamic Finance Guru on in just under 10 minutes time. So he'll be dealing with this in more detail, and you can ask him questions. But I just want to cover this briefly, and it's halal investing. So just a brief overview of what investing is. Basically, investing is basically where you purchase shares in a company. And when you do that, you're basically buying a piece of that company. And therefore, you become part owner in that firm. And in practice, what would happen is the company would take your money, use it to grow their business, and then generate profit. But how do you make money from this? Well, there are two ways: through dividends and also profit from selling the shares. So dividends are basically a share of profit that you may get on a monthly, quarterly, or yearly basis, depending on the company. And profit from selling the shares is basically, let's say you buy some shares in a company, the company does really well, and lots of people want to buy the shares. That will drive the price up. You can then sell it after driving the price up, and you make a profit. Now we're not going to recommend any investments or anything on this show, but it's really important to make sure that if you are investing, that you look for halal investments. What makes investing halal is that there's risk involved, unlike interest. With interest, you get a guaranteed return. With investing, your investments can go up as well as down. And then because of that risk that's involved, it's a halal transaction. But it also depends on things like the kind of companies you're investing in as well. It's not as simple as just looking to make sure the company doesn't sell alcohol. There's a lot more to it than that. We'll put that question forward to Ibrahim later on the show in just over 5 minutes time, and he'll hopefully be able to explain a lot more about the subject of investing and halal investing.
Yeah, and then it's the more traditional way to make money, which is getting a 9-to-5 job. It might sound really obvious, but having a 9-to-5 stable job gives you a stable flow of income. After that, the money can be used to increase your wealth by investing it in halal stocks and shares, or do a side project. What if you struggle to find a job, though? Nowadays, there are great deals of free training videos on any subject of your choice. You can do videos online on decorating, on gardening, or more, I guess, up-and-coming things like online marketing and so on. So you can become a master of Excel, learn new skills, and this can really help you in doing job applications and look for all of these new upcoming skills that might not have been as really popular when you were doing your degree. Not all the jobs, however, are halal, obviously. So what jobs are halal and what jobs are haram? This obviously can be very obvious sometimes. So for example, if you sell alcohol, that's not halal. If you are, for example, selling mortgages, again, that's very obvious that would not be halal. So you just need to think about what you're doing as a task during your job.
Yeah, in fact, I used to work at Cineworld here in Milton Keynes, and there was another guy who was a convert to Islam. he told me his name was Michael, and he would say that he would request not to be put on concessions, not to be put in the bar because selling alcohol, that kind of stuff. So, you do have these options even within your role. And then later on, I joined Ramadan FM, and then I see Michael again, except he's going by the name Khalil. It was Khalil Muhammad, Nasheed artist Khalil Muhammad, who's heavily involved in Ramadan FM. He does all the jingles that you hear just before the ads. I didn't actually know that was him when I was working with him at Cineworld, which was interesting. Okay, great. So let's cover one more way to make money, and that's by getting a bit of a side hustle. Have you ever done a side hustle, Kunzah?
Not that I know of, but I know you've got a lot of side hustles going on. What is a side hustle? Side hustle is basically freelancing. Here are some examples of freelancers project and side jobs for inspiration. For example, you can be a video editor, which is what Faisal's side hustle is, graphic designer, virtual assistant. You can also sell items online through eBay, Amazon, that kind of stuff. Deliver groceries. This has become a very popular side hustle actually due to obviously COVID lockdowns and so on. So you can just be a delivery driver for Asda, Tesco, whatever. You can be an Uber, Deliveroo delivery driver. Which brings me to the food delivery driver section. And you can even write online blogs or online news articles for a lot of the newspapers out there as well. They are a lot of them are just freelancers that write the articles on there. And there's nothing wrong with doing side hustles. However, if you're a graphic designer for an alcohol company and you're promoting whatever alcoholic drink they're selling, that's not probably allowed. So you just need to think about that as well when you're doing these side jobs as well. And very important, if you're earning more than £1,000 through your side hustle, whether that be videography, driving, delivering, or whatever, you do need to pay tax on it. So you do need to declare it to H&M revenues and so on. So just make sure that whatever you do it by the ethics that we have been taught through the Prophet ﷺ and through Islam.
Fantastic. Yeah, £1,000 being the limit for, I think, last financial year. Might be the same this year. Just make sure you do check. There's a certain amount that you can earn before having to declare it to HMRC. Okay, fantastic stuff. Well, look, when we come back, we'll have an interview with Ibrahim Khan from the Islamic Finance Guru. You don't want to miss it. Send your questions in on YouTube, on Facebook, on WhatsApp, and we'll be back with him after the break.
Feel your soul while your body flies. Ramadan FM. Feel your soul while your body flies. Ramadan FM. Your soul relax. Feed your soul while your body fasts.
Come and visit us at Al Ansar and find fantastic deals on food and drink. At Al Ansar, we specialize in Asian groceries and HMC Halal meat. We stock products from all over the world and have everything you need this Ramadan. From big packs of rice, flour and oil to dates, treats and snacks. You can find us at 153 Queens Way in Bletchley or call us on 01908 411 334.
German Doner Kebab wishes you Ramadan Kareem. Enjoy your doner after dusk with us and choose from the original Doner Kebab, the KKL, the Doner Crunch Burger, or perhaps the Boss Box and so much more. You can find your nearest GDK at GermanDonerKebab.com or bring the Ramadan experience to your doorstep by signing up for your Ramadan pack at RamadanTentProject.com. German Doner Kebab. Kebabs done right.
Ramadan Mubarak from Adam Accounting Services.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Need help with your accounts and tax work?
Contact us today on 01908 692 380 and see how we can help.
Adam Accounting Services. Friendly local accountants. Call us today on 01908 692 380.
Allah has bestowed us with another Ramadan. Its days are the perfect time to help the suffering Ummah with our supplications and our charitable giving. Make the difference with UK charity Ummah Welfare Trust by supporting its emergency, development and Ramadan programs. We are part of the Ummah, and the Ummah is a part of us. So be generous and donate for our brothers and sisters this Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum, dear listeners. I'm Zahida from the short reminder show Way to the Quran. Each week I'll be reading to you extracts from Way to the Quran. It's a book by Khurram Murad, and some other extracts to deepen our relation with Quran by listening to the most captivating words of wisdom. To listen to the extracts, please tune in after Zuhur Azan on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
For a list of all our sponsors, please visit ramadanfm.com.
Ramadan, 87.9 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Ramadan FM. We are live on 87.9 FM in Milton Keynes. You can also listen online, ramadanfm.com, and you can listen on YouTube or Facebook. You can watch us on YouTube and Facebook. Just search on ramadanfm.com. Right. We're now up to our interview segment of the show. Now, in our first show, we had Nasheed artist Saeed on the show. In our second show, we had the Imam of the new Cambridge Central Mosque. And on this show, we have a very special guest who can shed some light on our topic for today, which is halal money. He holds a BA in philosophy, politics and economics from the University of Oxford, an Ijaza in the memorization of Quran from Egypt, and an MA in Islamic banking and finance from Markfield Institute. It is none other than Ibrahim Khan from the Islamic Finance Guru, who joins us on the line now. Assalamu alaikum, Ibrahim.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. It's an absolute pleasure to be on.
Pleasure to have you as well. How's your Ramadan going?
Alhamdulillah, can't complain. I think it's going very quickly. You blink and you miss it, and I think it's a lot easier than last year. I found. I think we just got to that point where it's quite manageable, the timelines. So yeah, alhamdulillah, going well. How about yourselves?
Exactly the same. I think working with Ramadan FM speeds the time up. Definitely does, and it's already almost in the last 10 nights. So yeah, this will definitely be going really, really fast. Okay, great to have you on. So we've been talking about halal money on this show, so hoping you can shed some light on that subject for us. We've got loads of questions to ask you, so we've kind of grouped them into chunks. We'll talk about yourself first of all, your kind of blog, investing, and then we'll sort of go into zakat and charity and some questions on that as well. So for those who are not familiar with the Islamic Finance Guru website, what is it all about?
Yeah, I mean, Islamic Finance Guru started off as a labor of love back in 2015. And really think of it like the Muslim version of Money Saving Expert. So we help Muslims out with their personal finance, their investing journeys, get them out of debt, essentially make their money work for them. And the thinking here is that, the Muslim community is about 20% poorer than the rest of the world. And, half of the Muslims in the UK live in the 10% poorest constituencies. And you've seen the real impact of that with COVID and, how that's, severely affected the Muslim community relative to the other communities. And you see in lots of other places as well, like underrepresentation in media and politics, overrepresentation in prisons. And our kind of mission, I guess, is that we want to help nudge Muslims to essentially manage their money better and just make that pot grow larger, because that has so many other wider benefits to the community as a whole. So in many ways, I always think that I don't actually care about that person in front of me who I'm telling how they should think about their investing. Really, what I care about is their future generations, because ultimately you're going to use the money for a period of time, but then after that it's it's a responsibility for you to do it for the long term.
Great. That sounds like a great way, really, that you are helping a lot of the ummah out there, really, to equalize us more with the rest of the world, I guess. So then, do you do this full time now? Because you said it was a bit of a side project at the start.
Yeah, exactly. So we started it off as a blog, and it was really we started taking it a lot more like seriously in early 2019 when me and Mohsin, my co-founder, we said to each other, okay, let's just put it on a bit of a more commercial footing and just see what happens. And alhamdulillah, things snowballed, and me and Mohsin were working in corporate law, and we just we decided, what, let's just pack it in and go full time in Islamic Finance Guru. And we did that about 2 weeks before COVID hit last year. So it was a great time to go full time on an entrepreneurial venture. And actually, to be honest, it was actually a great time. It was something that we've really enjoyed, and you can't replace the ability to be doing fundamentally something that you're really passionate about, and also something that will inshallah help lots of people as a full-time job, right? We were doing this for 4 years as a hobby, so now we're doing this full-time as a career now. So it's great.
Every time I see your newsletter, it seems like you always have something new, whether that's an article, some kind of comparison tool. So what are you working on at the moment in Ramadan 2021?
Yeah, I mean, look, we came out with the Zakat calculator just before Ramadan, so that's a big focus for us right now. And the thinking behind this calculator was that obviously, it should be the best kind of calculator out there that you possibly can get, particularly from an investor's perspective, because, from an investor's lens, you've got so many different fiddly asset classes and pots of money that you're not really sure how Zakat applies to that. And we wanted to create a really nice calculator that gives you guidance at each step on exactly how to deal with it, so that when you leave it at the end, you actually feel like, I've actually, I feel like I have actually fully done my Zakat. There's no lingering doubt, I might miss that. And then the other thing that we added in here was we give a free portfolio health check, because when you're going through your Zakat, what you're actually doing is you're going through your assets, right? You're going through your net worth. And wouldn't it be nice if you go all the effort of adding in, putting in all those digits, if you then could use that to get a bit of a portfolio health check as well, to find out where your finances are. So we did that, and so that's a big focus for us right now. And then inshallah, after Ramadan, there's a whole host of exciting things to come, inshallah. One of the big ones is IFG Wealth, which is a new version of our comparison engine. So historically, you can use Islamic Finance Guru to find out about halal investing and all the different investments, but you haven't historically been able to get, a bit more guidance around, what should you actually pick, and also tracking the portfolios that you then create. So all of this is now in the pipeline, and inshallah, we'll be doing that, plus plenty more.
Fantastic stuff. Sounds really good. So let's talk about investing then, in particular. Let's start with sort of the basics. For those who have never got involved with investing before, don't quite understand how it works, could you just provide us with a really basic overview of what it is and what's involved?
Yeah, definitely. I guess the first thing to say is that people think there is a choice between investing and not investing. There really isn't, because when people say, I'm just going to hold this money in cash for now, and then I'll invest this in 6 months' time, what they're actually doing is they are investing now. They're just holding 100% of their portfolio in cash, which is a bad investment decision. And so, you can't escape from it. And I guess the way to think about it is from a priority basis. So the first thing is, you want to make sure that you have at least a buffer for about 6 months, a savings pot that you can get hold of quite quickly. So if you have outgoings of £1,000, you need £1,000 to just pay your bills, then you should have a buffer of about £6,000 at any one point that you can quickly get hold of. Once you've got that, then you want to start thinking about getting yourself onto the housing ladder, because that's where you can save a lot of money in rent. Like if you live in London, like I do, over the next 25, 30 years, if I don't buy my house, then I'm losing approximately £400,000 in rent and in potential kind of uplift of property, which is a crazy number. And so many Muslims are unfortunately still renting. So that's a second thing to work on, to get that deposit together for an Islamic mortgage, of course. And then finally, you want to build a diversified portfolio. And this is where the fun stuff starts, right? Where you can actually think about, okay, how am I going to go about doing this stuff? And there, you want to have probably 3 broad buckets where you put your money. One is stocks and shares and equity. The other is fixed income stuff, so things that are giving you a fixed return, like, for example, a buy-to-let property would give you a fixed return as rent every month. And then the final section is the 20% or so that you put into alternative assets. And these are the more high risk, high reward, high growth kind of investments that you use to give your portfolio a bit of a kick. It's like the garam masala in a biryani.
Great analogy there. So somebody's interested in investing stocks and shares, for example. How would they then go about determining whether a stock is halal or not?
So it's, I guess there's different modes, right? When you get these supercars, you've got like the easy mode, and then you can go into like the sports mode and all this sort of thing. And for most people, they're quite happy to just leave the car in like the normal mode. And that translates, I guess, for in investment to, someone who doesn't really want to get into the weeds of it. They just want to give their money to someone that keep it fairly safe, and they can just crack on and do it. And that, I think, looks like giving it to some kind of robo-advisor, someone like a Wahid or a Sarwa, or now in the US, a Ghaz, or someone like that, who just essentially, you set up an account with them, they invest the money, and you kind of forget about it. Then you've got a little bit more hands-on, where you've got, so this is where, you're going for either some kind of fund, or you're picking your own stocks to some extent. And this is where we've got, the IFG Fund Replicator, which gives you a list of the stocks that the top 5 funds in a particular kind of strategy have picked. So it gives you like 200 stocks to pick from. And all of these stocks are pretty legit because, the top funds have invested in them. So that's kind of, a little bit more involved than Wahid, because you now have to go ahead and pick some of the stocks. But at the same time, you still got your balances on the bike, because that this is a kind of kosher list of stocks. And then you take off the supports, and you go completely DIY. And this is where you really need to know what you're doing. And that way, you're now investing in stocks that you pick yourself, and you research yourself, and you get into them. Now, I know the question was, well, how do you know if it's halal? So obviously with Wahid, everything they do is going to be halal. As long as you're going for a Sharia compliant robo-advisor, that's fine. With the interim, the IFG Fund Replicator, obviously everything is halal there as well. When you're doing it DIY, you need to be able to check if a stock is Sharia compliant. And there's, broadly speaking, 2 big tests that you need to look at. The first is the qualitative test. What that means, that's a fancy way of saying, like, don't invest in William Hill, don't invest in, Heineken or something like that. It needs to look Sharia compliant. Then the second thing is a quantitative test. And that is where you're looking at the debt levels to make sure that they're below a certain threshold. 33% is the threshold. And also that they don't have too much haram income coming in. So again, make sure that there isn't a big portion of the income that is coming from, the sale of alcohol, for example.
Great. Yeah, and I know you have an article on kind of how to screen for halal stocks and shares, which I myself have found really, really useful. So thank you very much for putting that together. We've had a comment come in saying that Zoya is a good app for checking if the stock is halal or not, but membership is pricey though. Is that something you'd recommend using?
So my thoughts on Zoya, Islamically, I think there's another one as well. These are all great. These are all good. The way I think about it is that if you're going to buy a stock, and you need to, obviously when you're having to check if it's Sharia compliant, you're having to check because you're doing it in a DIY way. That means that you need to be doing your research. So my view on it is that definitely use these apps. And I personally use the FT. The FT has a market section, and there you can see the debt levels as well, as a first sniff test. Like, if is it like crazily, too much debt, Zoya is telling it's haram, that tells you, okay, that's probably not a goer anyway. There's no point digging further. But if you are actually going to invest in a company, then I personally think you should actually dig into the annual report yourself and do the analysis yourself, not just for the Sharia check, but also just to read that annual report or at least glance over it, because you owe yourself that, at least at the minimum, because people have this wrong conception of, I'm an absolute genius, I'm going to pick these stocks, this is going up, I've just got a gut instinct, this is going up. Most people are wrong. Most people do not make money. If it was that easy to make money, there would be lots of millionaires floating around. It's not easy to make money on the stock market, and you're competing against people who do this professionally, and even a lot of them get it wrong. So it's really hubris and false kind of bravado to think that you're just going to kind of have a gut instinct and get it right. You have to at least do the homework to give yourself at least some basis for saying, you know what, I've done my homework and now I'm investing. So bottom line is, use all of these apps or the FT or any other kind of subscription service where you get the bit of the quantitative analysis. And if it passes the first sniff test, then you should definitely dig in further properly yourself and do it manually, because you owe yourself that at least.
Go ahead.
Generally, then, would you say if, for example, a company doesn't have a large amount of money they've borrowed from other places, would they be a safe long-term investment as well? Because even if they then drop in price or whatever, they would have a bigger buffer to go on.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a broad rule, that sounds sensible. But when it comes to investing in the stock market generally, you should always diversify, because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, as everyone's grandmother used to say. And you can't ever reliably say, you know what, this company is just never going to go bust, because sure enough, that company will find some way, shape or form to somehow go bust or somehow suffer. So what you want to do is spread the risk across at least 7 stocks, but ideally 15 or more. And the more you buy, the more you diversify, the less you are exposed to the shocks of the stock market. But at the same time, if you run a fairly concentrated portfolio, I mean, I personally run a fairly concentrated portfolio of somewhere around the 10 mark. And the reason why is because I'm a high conviction investor. I research the stocks, get comfortable on them, and then I invest. And I want to have a decent chunk of exposure if that stock does well. Whereas if you've invested in 100 and one of them goes up, it's really just a small digit in your overall portfolio. It's not going to really move the needle. So that's kind of the balancing act you have to strike.
We've had a question come in on WhatsApp from Bilal, who's all the way in Abu Dhabi. He says, Ibrahim mentioned that we need to make sure that a large portion of the income is not from a haram source. Does that mean that if they have a small percentage of income from a haram source, then it is permissible?
Yeah. So if it's below the 5% threshold, then it would be seen as permissible. And the scholars have set these numbers, and they're not, there's no kind of hadith that says you should have below 5%. The scholars have set these principles based on their understanding, and also certain fiqh principles, like the majority, whatever is in the majority is, you give that thing the ruling of the majority as opposed to the minorities, is like one of the principles. And the other reason why they've come up with this threshold is because a lot of companies, most companies will have at least some haram income. For example, just the interest that they might get in the bank account, for example, or some random other dealing that they might do, that it would have something. So if you set the threshold really strongly at 0%, then that would mean that Muslims are basically only going to have a very, very small number of companies to invest from, which isn't that helpful.
Okay, thanks a lot for the answer. That will clarify for quite a lot of people that are wondering where these rulings and things come from. So we've had another question as well come through from Zaira, who's asking, like, for a first-time investor who's never invested in anything before and they are looking to do halal investing, would you recommend using an app like Wahid, or would you recommend choosing your own portfolio?
If you're a first-time investor, then it really depends on how much appetite and time you have to give to this thing. Like if you're keen to dive deep and properly get to grips with investing and learn about this whole thing, then there's no harm maybe putting a portion of it into something a bit more passive, but then putting aside a portion of it to use to invest yourself and learn how to do it. Because that you have to start somewhere, and if you are willing to put in a little bit of time and effort, I think it's a fairly enjoyable and quite rewarding experience as well, ultimately, because then you feel like you're in control of what you're investing in.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So then we can move on to our next segment, which is about zakat and charity. So I noticed that you had a blog out recently on zakat, which was very useful actually when I was looking through this as well. So we're actually coming up to the last 10 days of Ramadan. And as you said in your YouTube video, is billions of pounds are really given in this month for zakat. So can you give us a brief overview of who should pay zakat and the difference really between zakat and sadaqah?
Yeah, definitely. So zakat is due for anyone who is who has money above the nisab threshold. So that's approximately, from memory now, £350 roughly in the UK at the moment. And if someone has had that level of wealth throughout the year, like let's say the 1st of December last, what's the date today? 1st of May last year, they had that wealth and they've maintained that and they're still above the nisab threshold right now, then they should pay the zakat. And they should pay zakat as a snapshot. You just take a snapshot on 1st of May today, what is my wealth? And then you pay zakat on that. And I've completely forgotten the other question you had. Yes, there's a difference between zakat and sadaqah. So zakat is a very specific kind of frankly wealth tax that Muslims have to pay. Obviously it's an act of worship as well, but it's a compulsory act of worship. It's a compulsory act of charity that Muslims have to give annually, and it only is allowed to go to 8 categories of recipient. So it's not just any old kind of, I'm going to just take any old money and I'm going to give it to any old people. This is the specific amount of money that I have to take from my wealth and give to these specific 8 people. And so you have to be careful, to make sure that you tick the zakat box when you give zakat, because otherwise it wouldn't necessarily be accepted.
And there's always this debate about whether we should pay zakat locally or internationally. And they say that people international sometimes need it more. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so my thoughts on this are that you should pay. I mean, the UK in particular, there aren't enough people who pay locally, and I think NZF have done great work in raising awareness of this issue, and so a lot of other charities are now focusing in on this point, which I think is great. I think ultimately, having a mix isn't a bad thing. And if you do give abroad, that's also perfectly fine, because there's a lot of people that have requirements abroad. So giving abroad is perfectly fine. But the way I personally do it is, I would say, when you give abroad, give to those kind of charities that have a large establishment in those overseas jurisdictions, because otherwise, if you're giving to a small charity that says that it's going to be able to give to, I don't know, Gambia or Kenya or somewhere, it probably doesn't have the infrastructure to be able to efficiently and effectively deliver that aid. When you're running an international aid operation, it's a massive endeavor. And so my view is, give to smaller charities locally, because they'll have the ability to give that. But then if you give it internationally, I always pretty much just give it to Islamic Relief, because I'm like, they're the biggest one. So I'll just give it to them because they'll have that scale.
Yes, thanks a lot. And then in terms of initiatives then, are there any local initiatives other than NZF that you think are good and you should promote more?
Yeah, it's a good question. What else? I mean, there's a whole bunch of initiatives. I don't know if this would classify as zakat though, so that's where I have to be careful. One initiative that I think is great is MEND, so Muslim Engagement and Development. They do a lot of work with campaigning against Islamophobia and raising a bit of awareness in the political classes, and just generally getting Muslims more involved in politics. I think they do fantastic work. They also have a legal discrimination clinic, which helps fight against Islamophobia. I mean, I used to be a volunteer there, so I saw firsthand the the incredible work they do. So I would definitely recommend those guys. And the reason why I recommend organizations like this is because sometimes it's it's a lot easier to sell a donation to an orphan, for example, and you definitely should. Orphans need donations, and you should do that. But then because of that, sometimes we often miss the long term impactful stuff that could potentially end up resulting in less orphans in 5-10 years time. Because if you're always spending money firefighting and you're not actually dealing with the fire itself, then it's not really a long-term kind of solution. So yeah, highly recommend looking at someone like that. Also, I think Syria relief is very important from an international perspective. From a local perspective, the Myriad Foundation in Manchester does great work. And then Ummah Welfare Trust, I think, does some local work as well. So yeah, all great charities to check out.
Well, look, time is racing faster than Ramadan has gone so far. I just want to read out a couple more comments that we've had come through, and then we'll end with your About Us video, just to kind of summarize who you are. So we had a comment from Hannah saying that the Solace charity accepts zakah as well for local revert sisters. So she's a revert sister here in Milton Keynes. So that's another one. And then we had a question from Imtiaz saying, do you have to pay zakat on assets you've held for less than a year?
It's a good question. The mainstream view, well, I say the mainstream, the Hanafi view is that you pay zakat as a snapshot, as opposed to linking every asset with that requirement that it is in your ownership for a year, because otherwise things just get really complicated. It's just like near impossible to actually do that. I know that some of the Shafi'i scholars have that position, but the mainstream view across all the a lot of the Islamic scholars in the UK and pretty much all the charities is just take the snapshot position, and that's the cleanest way to do it.
Fantastic stuff. And there's just one more that we'll go through.
Yeah, so this might be something that a lot of people find themselves in. So what if if you've bought a house using a mortgage, for example, and you're living in that house, but you haven't fully paid the mortgage off? Is that accountable for zakat as well?
Yeah, so you can take off the debts that are owed. There's two kinds of mortgages. One is an Islamic mortgage, and the other one is a conventional. With a conventional, you can, let's say you've got £12,000 that is due over the course of this year. You can actually deduct that from the zakat that is due, because it is seen as a debt. Some scholars say you can take the entire 12 months off. Others say that you should only take 1 month off, but that's their perspective. On Islamic mortgages, you are only allowed to take the next month off because it's seen as rent as opposed to a debt. And you should, and if you have a buy-to-let property, then that's not seen as zakatable. The only income that you get from it, that's seen as zakatable. But other than that, you don't have to pay zakat on that. Does that help?
Yeah. I mean, that's really, really useful. Answers the question. So yeah, thank you very much for speaking to us. Just before you go, how can people get in touch with you? Is there a social media channel you use more than others? Website?
Yeah, I mean, if they just go on the contact us page on the website, or YouTube is good. We've got Telegram groups that they can check out. There's lots of ways.
Fantastic stuff. Look, we'll end with your About Us video to give people a summary of who you are. Thank you very much for talking to us, and Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Ibrahim.
And I'm Mohsin. We're the co-founders of IslamicFinanceGuru.com. We help Muslims with their halal investment, personal finance and entrepreneurial journeys.
And we combine both the commercial and the Islamic. So halal investments, for example, we'll outline a whole range of options for you and help you pick out the best ones and the halal ones. And likewise with Islamic mortgages, we'll analyze are Islamic mortgages truly Islamic or not. And if you're a Muslim entrepreneur, we'll help you get your business off the ground.
So what does that look like practically? Well, if we increase the flow of money into the Islamic economy, we increase the affluence of Muslims generally. And that gets us to a point where we can start addressing some of the problems that we face on a day-to-day basis. Imagine if we can take the huge number of small Muslim businesses that are out there and take them to the next level. And imagine in doing that if we found the next Mark Zuckerberg in Spark Hill.
So the reason why we do Islamic Finance Guru is because we believe that creating a wealthier Muslim community can have a real impact. About half of the Muslims in the country live in the 10% poorest areas in the country. So by creating a wealthier community, we can actually address health outcomes, education outcomes, underrepresentation in media and politics, overrepresentation in prisons. So when we encourage people to get into halal investment, halal finance and entrepreneurship, we believe that we can create a lasting legacy.
That was Ibrahim Khan from the Islamic Finance Guru, who we just spoke to live on this show. I think we had a lot more questions for him, but time was running out. Really, really good to have him on. You can listen back to that interview on ramadanfm.com via our YouTube and our Facebook page as well. Okay. Before the interview, we were talking about ways to make money in Islam. We talked about interest, actually. So we had a couple WhatsApps come in about that. Hannah says, another problem with interest is that it is typically not taxed in advanced countries. And this puts greater burden of paying taxes on people who earn money through more halal ways. Yeah, that is another problem.
Yeah, and then we had another message saying, Salam, very nice and really good information on the Halal Money Show. And then we had another message from Naveed saying that she would spend her bonus, whatever, if she got one, on renovating her kitchen. And then she would also throw a party for all the family so we could have a big get-together after COVID. Obviously, regulations allowing.
That's right. So our question on the WhatsApp is, if you received a bonus right now, how would you spend it? So get in touch with us either on WhatsApp or through the Facebook or YouTube comments. Just go up to ramadanfm.com and the numbers are available on there. It'll be really good to hear from everybody who's listening. People often struggle to find something to text in with. Well, we've given you one right now. Okay, let's get back onto our topic. Ways to make halal money. So we've talked about a side hustle. What we haven't covered yet is making money through a blog. This is really interesting because a lot of people have blogs and websites out there, but how can you use that blog or website or YouTube channel even to make money from it? Well, there's lots of ways, but we'll discuss two of them. One is by displaying banner ads on your website, and the second one is affiliate marketing. So let's say you have a website such as a halal food blog. It can be Islamic related, a hijab lifestyle blog, halal travel blog, or a blog that reviews miswaks. You can make money on it by adding display ads. So this is how it works. A company who wants to advertise their products around the web will typically sign up to a tool such as Google Ads. They will upload their banner to the tool, and they'll select which audience they wish to target. That might be people who have visited the website in the past, which is why you find ads follow you around the web. It might be other websites based on topics or keywords, or it might be an in-market segment where Google kind of determines if you're in the market for something such as a new car or a wedding, and it can kind of then show ads to those audiences. And the company pays every time somebody sees the banner or somebody clicks on the banner. It's usually cost per 1,000 impressions. They'll pay the platform, Google, and then Google in turn will pay the owner of the website some commission. So now you're the owner of a website or a blog. Let's say you run a blog about nasheeds and you want your ads to show up on the blog. You basically sign up to an ads platform such as Google AdSense. They give you a code to place on your website. And then it's as easy as that. Ads appear all over your website. You get paid every time somebody clicks or sees a banner from your website by the company who's advertising. Simple as that. Another way to do it is similar, but it's affiliate marketing. So it's instead of banners, this time you post links to products that you might want to sell. A common example is Amazon affiliates. Let's say you have a blog and you want to promote, I don't know, let's say miswaks. We'll use that example. You write a blog all about miswaks. You sign up to Amazon affiliates and you can generate a link for the miswak of your choice. If somebody then clicks on that link that you've put on your website and buys the product, you get a commission. But here's the really cool part. If somebody clicks on your link and buys anything on Amazon within 24 hours, even if it's not the miswak that you linked to, you still get commission. So somebody could click on a miswak, but actually buy a widescreen TV, and you'll get a cut of that widescreen TV. So this is why you find a lot of people using Amazon affiliates and promoting them, especially before Black Friday and times like this where people are shopping. So those are just two ways you can make money via a website.
Yep. And then our last way that you can make money, halal money, was actually to give to charity. Sounds odd, right? But that's actually very, very much true. And it's actually said in the Quran. Giving money away does increase your wealth. But bear with me on this one. So Allah says in the Quran, He will return and multiply the reward of those who give in charity. It takes some faith, but those who do give in charity will see their wealth return in some shape or form. So this is a hadith. There is not a single day in which a servant wakes that two angels come down from the heavens. One of them says, "O Allah, give to the one that spends and a substitute of what he has spent." And the other one says, "Oh Allah, give to the one that it withholds his money destruction." So basically, giving to charity is very much recommended to increase your wealth as well. As an example of this is zakat. We all, obviously, if you have to pay zakat, we all pay zakat every year. Then the next year comes around and we don't even notice that we really did pay zakat the previous year, that 1,000 or 2,000 pounds of money or whatever went away from our account. And the next year we haven't even noticed it, and that's because giving in zakat or giving in any other type of charity does increase your wealth, and it will increase your wealth in the following year.
Amazing stuff. So up next, we will be talking about our Mythbuster segment. We've got a few really interesting myths lined up. One about whether Tarawih is compulsory, another one about jihad as well. That's right, we will be tackling that big topic. We've got 20 minutes until the Maghrib Azan. The Azan will be at 8:30 today.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك من خير ما تعلم وأعوذ بك من شر ما تعلم وأستغفرك من كل ما تعلم إنك تعلم ولا نعلم وأنت علام الغيوب اللهم ارحمني من زماني هذا وإحداق الفتن وتطاول أهل الجرأة علي واستضعافهم إياه اللهم اجعلني معك في عياد منيع وحرز حصين من جميع خلقك حتى تبلغني أجلي معافى.
So we just thought we'd play a bit of zikr there, just a transition from the money segment to the Mythbuster segment, inshallah. And we also want to play some of the 99 names on this show as well. So those will be coming up shortly. Okay, let's do our first myth, a nice, easy myth. It is sinful to sleep with your feet pointing towards the Kaaba. Now, there's actually no hadith or verse in the Quran about this issue. However, there are in some cultures, it is a sign of disrespect. And based on this, some scholars say it is disliked, but not sinful to point your feet towards the Qibla. So let's look at what the sheikhs say. First of all, we spoke to Sheikh Salim Al-Azhari, who's from Islam Channel. He does the Q&A on Islam Channel. He said, there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're not doing it deliberately out of disrespect. And then we also have a comment from Sheikh Faisal Khan, who says, generally speaking, Hanafi jurists mention that it is disliked to intentionally outstretch one's feet towards the Qibla, whether it's when you're going to sleep or otherwise. And he mentions some examples of the sheikhs who say this. Yet it is understood that is an issue of adab and not sinful as such. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from a verse in the Quran which says, whoever venerates the sacred symbols of Allah, that is certainly from the piety of hearts. And they say that the Qibla is deemed a sacred symbol and hence it should be venerated and honored. So in conclusion, some scholars say it's disliked, but nobody would say that it is haram as such to sleep with your feet towards the Kaaba. The next one is praying Tarawih in the mosque is compulsory and your fasts do not count unless you pray it. I mean, this is quite a big misconception that I've heard in several different communities. Now, first of all, let's have a listen to the opinion of various sheikhs and muftis, rather than us just giving our view. Our view will just be nothing in sight of the sheikhs and the scholars. We've got a few opinions, and then we'll speak about it in more detail.
Is not mandatory. So when you say, is it a must? No, it's not must. It's highly recommended. You do it, you get big amount of reward. You don't do it, you're not sinful. If you offer the Taraweeh and witr with the Imam in the masjid, Allah would give you the reward as if you have prayed the whole night. One says, okay, then why do we pray tahajjud before Fajr? Simply because you want more reward.
A question that is being asked to me on the screen right now is Taraweeh farad? The answer is no, it's a sunnah, it's quite important. It doesn't mean that it's sunnah, so it's not important. You must fulfill it and you must try your best not to miss it because it's definitely an act of worship that is loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Taraweeh is voluntary prayers. The mandatory prayers are only the 5 daily prayers. The 5 daily prayers. So Taraweeh is definitely sunnah. And when we say sunnah, it also means nafila, yani voluntary.
Salat al-Taraweeh is a nafil or a sunnah salah. It is not fard, it is not obligatory. So you may pray as many or as few or as 0 rak'at, it doesn't matter. Taraweeh is not obligatory. So if a person does not pray Taraweeh, they are not sinful.
There we go. So hopefully that clarifies the myth on whether Taraweeh is compulsory or not. We had some big sheikhs there. You had Sheikh Yasir Qadri, you had Mufti Menk, you had the sheikh from Huda TV and some others as well. All with the same opinion that it's not compulsory but highly recommended to pray Taraweeh. There's actually a hadith which talks about why.
Yes. Aisha radiallahu anha said that Allah's apostle went out in the middle of the night and prayed in the mosque, and some men prayed behind him. In the morning, the people spoke about it, and then a large number of them gathered and prayed behind him on the following night. The next morning, the people again talked about it, and on the third night, the mosque was full in large number of people. Allah's Prophet, peace be upon him, came out, and the people prayed and came out, and and the people prayed behind him. On the fourth night, the mosque was overwhelmed with people and could not accommodate them. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not come out on that night. He only came out on the following morning of prayer. And then in the following morning, he actually recited and actually addressed the people and said, "Your presence was not hidden from me," saying to the people that had gathered in the mosque the night before, "but I was afraid that the night prayer, Qiyam, should be enjoined on you, and you might not be able to carry it on." So Allah's Prophet ﷺ died, and the situation remained like that. People prayed individually. So basically what this hadith is saying is that the Prophet did on purpose did not go to the mosque to pray Taraweeh. So he did not want people to feel like it was compulsory for them to pray Taraweeh, and he did not want this prayer to become compulsory. It was only after he passed away that people started praying together, and this is actually where the roots of Taraweeh comes from. It is narrated by Muslim on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever stands in Ramadan with iman and hope of reward, all his past sins will be forgiven." And that's from Muslim. Fast forward a few years, it's written in the Mauta Malik on the authority of Abdurrahman ibn Abdul Qari that he said, "I came out with Umar ibn Khattab in Ramadan towards the masjid. People were scattered everywhere, and a man was praying alone, and another man was praying alone, and a group of people were praying in another corner. Then Hazrat Umar said, "I swear by Allah that I intend to gather these people under one Imam, and that is better." Thus I gathered them to pray behind Ubay ibn Khattab. So basically what this says is that it was in the time of the Khalifa of Umar that it was actually more common practice that the Taraweeh prayer were prayed together in the mosque. And this was really because everybody was still praying them in the mosque. They were all just praying them individually because that's what the Prophet used to do. And then Umar Khattab just said that it made sense for them all to pray together. And this is where the Taraweeh, where it became a congregational prayer, really.
Amazing stuff. So that hopefully clears up some of the misconception about the Taraweeh prayer. Up next, we'll talk about the big topic of jihad in the Quran.
Asma'ullahul Husna, there are 99 names of Allah.
Al-Muhaymin, the ever-watchful. He is the one who watches over his creatures and is fully aware of all their actions, sustenance, and the terms he has fixed for them in this life. He knows all their affairs, has power over all of them, has a record of everyone's deeds, and is aware of them and encompasses them from all sides.
Just over 10 minutes until the Maghrib Azan. The Azan will be at 8:30 today if you live in or around Milton Keynes. I've just noticed how dark it is in this room on our webcam there. Yeah, extremely dark. Great. Okay, so up next we'll talk about the myth about jihad means holy war. In fact, jihad does not mean holy war. It comes from the Arabic word juhada, which means to struggle or to strive. If you were to say create a really large building, you would say you did juhada, you struggled to make it. Also, the word ijtihad comes from this root as well. This is like when a ruling is derived from something that didn't exist at the time of the Prophet. Like Facebook, for example, didn't exist back then. So a scholar would maybe put a ruling in place about Facebook of their own opinions based on doing some research of what we do have in the Quran and Hadith. So they would be doing ijtihad. So jihad means to strive. It can mean to strive with your wealth against your nafs, to drive the society better, and it can also mean to strive by fighting as well. Where it is referring to fighting, it's actually called qital. Now, critics of Islam will quote a certain verse of the Quran, Surah Tawbah, chapter 9, verse number 5, and they will say it says, wherever you find a non-Muslim, you kill them. However, you have to read the context. That's really important, to read the verses before and the verses after to actually understand what this means. And this is actually referring to being revealed in the battlefield, so to speak. I think Dr. Zakir Naik does a really good explanation of this verse in Surah Tawbah, chapter number 10. So let's have a listen to what he has to say. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can watch the video as well.
Means to strive, to struggle. One of the striving can include fighting. Fighting also should be in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is qital fi sabilillah. Now regarding a question that why does Islam encourage fighting and killing, and there are many critics of Islam who normally say Islam is a ruthless religion, it always says that we should kill the non-Muslim wherever we find them. Many critics, including the critic of India, Arun Shuri, and he writes in his book The World of Fatwa, he quotes Surah Tawbah chapter number 9 verse number 5 and says that the Quran says wherever you find a kafir, into bracket Hindu, that you kill them. And if you open the Quran, Surah Tawbah chapter 9 verse number 5, and if you read, it does say wherever you find a kafir, you kill. But this is a quotation out of context. For the context, if you read the first few verses, it speaks about a peace treaty between the mushriks of Makkah and the Muslims. If you read Surah Tawbah, chapter 9, first few verses, it speaks about a peace treaty between the Muslims and the mushriks of Makkah. Now this peace treaty was unilaterally broken by the mushriks of Makkah. By the time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reaches verse number 5, He gives them an ultimatum to the mushriks and He tells them, put things straight in 4 months' time, otherwise a declaration of war. And in the battlefield, Allah says that when the enemies come to attack you, you kill the enemies. So this verse is revealed in the battlefield, that when the enemies come to kill you, don't get scared, fight them. But naturally, any army general today, to boost up the morale of his soldiers, he will say that when the enemies come, kill them. He will not say that just be quiet. And Arun Shuri, after quoting verse number 5, he jumps to verse number 7. Because verse number 6 has the reply. Surah Tawbah chapter 9 verse number 6 says that if the kafir, if the enemy seek asylum, if they want peace, don't just give it to them. Escort them to a place of security. If the enemy wants peace or asylum, escort them to a place of security. Today, the most merciful army general, maximum will tell his soldiers that let the enemy go. Here Allah says, don't just let them go, escort them to a place of security. So whenever these verses are there of killing, including the verse of Surah Anfal, chapter 8, verse number 60, when they say that, prepare your steed and be prepared, attack the enemy. The next verse says, but if the enemy is inclined towards peace, you give it to them. So almost all the verses we talk about fighting. After that it says that if they want peace, peace is better.
I think that really helps clarify the misconception there about jihad meaning holding war and Islam referring to fighting, which of course is completely out of context. There were wars at the time of the Prophet, and this verse is referring to a particular situation, as he mentioned.
Yeah, and that really exemplifies why when you are reading the Quran, you're reading it in English, you have to read the tafsir with it, because that really tells you when the verse was revealed, what was the context the verse was revealed in, what was happening in Makkah or Medina, what was happening with the Prophet ﷺ, what was happening in that environment, really, why this verse was revealed, because that's the case for quite a lot of verses that are, I guess, blown out of context by the media and discussed and in the media as well. So it's really important that the context is considered of the verse and the whole of the paragraph as well. Don't just take one verse and quote it. And this goes for verses that are obviously putting Islam in a bad light, and also for verses that are putting Islam in a good light. You need to consider that for both.
The next myth is Islam means peace. Well, in fact, it doesn't quite mean peace. It actually means to submit. So the root word for Islam is asilmi, which means submission or surrender. And it is understood submission to Allah or submission to the will of God. We also get the word Muslim from the same root. And there's a verse in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 208, which says, "O you who believe, enter Islam completely. Do not follow the footsteps of the shaitan." And it says that word there, the root word, asilmi, instead of Islam, if you like. So, Islam means to submit. And in a way, you could say it means peace acquired through submission to God. But the core translation is to submit.
The next one we have is that Muslims worship a different God to Jews and Christians. A lot of people, in fact, think that Allah is a specific Islamic deity, but really it just means God in Arabic. Christian Arabs even use the word Allah when referring or praying to God. And since Islam is an Abrahamic religion, Muslims believe Allah is the same God who Jesus, Moses, and other biblical prophets all prayed to. In the first chapter of the Arabic Bible, in fact, it says, "For God so loved the world," and the word used for God is Allah. But we would also like to clarify that obviously Allah, the actual Arabic word for God, Allah, encompasses more than just God. It has a much more complete meaning, which actually encompasses everything that Allah really is for us and for humanity.
Yeah, because the word God, if you add ESS, it becomes goddess. If you add S, it becomes gods, which you can't do with the word Allah. So we like to use the term Allah. It's much, as you said, much more complete and much more better. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes until the azan. So let's play our final 99 name of Allah, and then we'll come back and we'll do a short dua. It'll be a very basic dua, because I'm a very basic person. But inshallah, we'll do some form of dua, and then we can play some zikr until the azan time.
Asma'ullahul Husna, there are 99 names of Allah.
Al-Qabid, Al-Basit.
The withholder, the expander. The withholder is the one who takes away souls, provision, and whatever he pleases. And the expander is the one who gives provision, mercy, and whatever he wishes. He's also the one who stretches out his hands so that the believers may repent and turn to him. These two names are among those names of Allah which always come together, for absolute perfection is realized in their combination, and they cannot be used separately.
Amazing stuff. So, Kunzah, did you have anything you wanted to wrap up with before we go into the dua? An Islamic rap, perhaps?
I don't have any Islamic raps. I did have a question to our WhatsApp line, which was, how would you spend your bonus? And we actually had an answer to that from Zaira, who says that she was very responsible and she put all her bonus in a pension tax-free account, which is a very responsible thing to do.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, let's do a basic dua, and then we'll wrap up. We've got 2 minutes until the Maghrib Azan. In fact, we've got 1 minute and 3 seconds until the Maghrib Azan today in Milton Keynes. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إني أسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم إني لك صمت وبك آمنت وعليك توكلت وعلى رزقك أفطرت. Inshallah, we have 30 seconds until the azan. We'll leave you with some dhikr to take you up to that. Assalamu alaikum.
الحزب الأول. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فصل في كيفية الصلاة على النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وأزواجه وذريته. رمضان رمضان رمضان